Hi, my name's Phil. I like to come out politics, and in this video I'd like to query the notion the Tories had yesterday that Sunak has just had his best ever week. Particularly surreal because just a few hours after they were making this claim, one of their number defected to Labour, the second to do so inside this parliament. I'd like to discuss two main things really. First would be that defection, now that I've had time to find out more. And the second would be whether Sunak really had a good week, even if that defection hadn't happened. But the defection first. As those who tuned into my stream last night will know, I was not best pleased at first. I'd only just found out as I went onto the stream. It not only caused me to hastily change the topic of the stream, but I wasn't happy about a Conservative MP being associated with the worst governments of modern times, only to change team at the end. However, when it was pointed out to me that he wasn't just trying to be the Labour candidate for a seat which Labour are now going to win, I calmed down. You know, he's not standing at the next election, so okay, fine. In fact, I calmed down and became confused because then I was thinking, well, why did he do it then? Like, leaving the Conservative Party as an act of protest because it's trashing the NHS and has become, as he described it, a right-wing nationalist party. That's one thing. You just resign from the party, right? You go, I'm off. I'm being associated with this. But why not just resign from your party? Why then also join Labour? Right-wing shills on social media were all suggesting a grubby deal whereby Starmer puts him in the House of Lords after the election, but that makes no sense. I get how a Tory thinks that way, but it wouldn't actually help Labour. Not only would it mean Starmer's first active Prime Minister is basically to be seen as sleazy as his predecessors, but why would Labour think putting a former Conservative MP into the Lords, where the Conservatives already have way more peers than any other party, would help their interests? The report suggested that what Poulter wanted was a role in helping Labour rebuild the NHS. He's a mental health doctor working in the NHS. So essentially what Poulter gets out of the deal is a chance to help restore the NHS, a bit of atonement, put himself to some genuine public service. So you can see why Tories in the media can't think that this was the payoff for Poulter and assume there must be a reward somewhere down the line. They're incapable of thinking people just want to put themselves to public service without a personal reward. But regardless of the conditions, this defection has done two things to trip the Tories up. First of all, it's a very public show of someone moving from the Conservatives to Labour a few days before like major elections. It's another in-your-face sign that there's a shift from the Conservatives to Labour in the country and there's about to be a change of government. Second, it's highlighting the state of the NHS. Here you've got an NHS doctor who has been a Conservative MP for many years, saying that his former party are trashing the place. It's quite powerful, especially when so many voters do prioritise the NHS in their voting decisions. So even if Sunak really had the best ever week last week, the way it ended was certainly a disaster. But I would query even the notion that up until that point, it had been a good week for Sunak. Let's consider what happened. First of all, he got his Rwanda bill through Parliament. This is cited as a good move for the Tories. But is it? Surely they can't cite anything as good until they get some indication in the polls that it's won people over. You know, the test of it has to be, did you get a boost in the polls? And the answer is not immediately after they got the Rwanda bill through, no. But, you know, wait a few weeks. If it doesn't win them votes, it's just an expensive distraction. And if they do want the election in autumn, and I completely believe that Sunak at least does, then isn't the Rwanda plan going to be a problem for them over summer? Now he's got his legislation, he's got no more excuses. But the boats aren't going to stop. Unless Sunak has a really cunning plan here, and I don't think cunning plans is what he's about, I think Tory MPs in September, I'm not sure they're going to be seeing the Rwanda plan or the Rwanda bill having been passed through Parliament as a good thing. I think they're actually going to rue it, if I'm honest. Second, we had a whole load of like cabinet blow-ups. We had David Cameron basically saying that Brexit was the reason we couldn't pursue the best way to deal with channel crossings. Then we had Kemi Badenoch attacking David Cameron for not laying the groundwork for Brexit while he was Prime Minister. Then all through last week, we've had more and more stories of Penny Mordaunt meeting leaders of the far right in the party, supposedly about making her leader if they decide to bin Sunak after the local elections. Then Grant Shapps has also been fairly blatantly campaigning to become the next Tory leader as well. It's not immediately obvious to me how some of the biggest names in the cabinet going rogue is part of a good week for Sunak. Third was Chris Philp's car crash appearance on Question Time, where he exposed the utter stupidity of the government, as he couldn't answer the first thing about anything going on in Rwanda. His party, his government has just passed a bill that says Rwanda is safe, and yet he knows nothing about Rwanda. He wasn't even sure that it wasn't the same place as the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when I looked in the audience, and you actually had a load of young men, couldn't believe it. One was covering his eyes at the stupidity of the responses. A government minister was humiliating himself in front of the public. And I could not believe my eyes when I saw that Philp had been sent to do the interviews this morning. After a major defection, why on earth would you send out a minister who'd just had a car crash of a performance a few days earlier? Are the Tories gluttons for punishment? The BBC described it on their webpage as Chris Philp defends government's NHS record. Mate, the government's NHS record is nearly 8 million people on the waiting list for treatment. Huge numbers of people out of work with long-term sickness, which the Tories are also whining about as if it's the fault of those who are ill but can't get treatment. In fact, a good chunk of them are ill because of the Tories' botched response to COVID. The Tories' record on the NHS is an unmitigated disaster from every angle. It is also something that voters take very seriously. This is not something that is an absolute disaster area, but voters don't consider it that important. No, they consider it very important. What you would need in a situation like this, after that defection last night, where the NHS is being made front and centre again, from the Tory point of view, what you want is someone who is an accomplished media performer and who can argue convincingly that black is white. Not someone who's just been humiliated on some basic points of geography and geopolitics in public. Fourth, the Tories thought that Sunak's defence spending pledge was a good move. But it's been called out as a smoke and mirrors con. It's all lies. The Institute for Fiscal Studies have torn it to pieces. In fact, let us just pretend that it actually does get some traction with voters. Labour have got so many lines to attack it with. First, the maths is incredibly dodgy, as I pointed out in three different ways, at least. I pointed out in a video on the Match a few days ago. I won't repeat that. Second, the plan is to spend less on defence than Labour did when they were last in power as a share of GDP. I suspect Labour won't go hard on this because I don't think they need to. I don't think this is going to have much cut through to the public. But let's say it does. Let's say it turns out it does. Labour have got lots of ammunition to use. Frankly, the only good news that Sunak could actually have genuinely had over the last week is that polling shows he's probably not going to have the complete calamity with the local and mayoral election results this week that otherwise may have been the case. As far as I can tell, polling for these contests, I mean, it's always fraught. You know, the local mayoral elections polling can be a little bit sporadic. But quite a few of the crucial mayoral contests look really very tight. And when you add in voter suppression via voter ID, which will heavily favour the Tories, as it was always intended to do, I think they're going to get away with this week. There's every reason to believe that the local elections, like the council elections, will be a disaster for the Tories. Absolutely. And ordinarily that would be calamitous, but the focus is going to be on the mayoral elections. If they get away with some of the key mayoral elections, I think they'll get away with it. You know, Labour should win in London still, but the combination of fiddling the system back to first past the post and voter ID will make it tighter than it should be. To say nothing of the incredibly dirty campaign the Tories have been running in London. Ben Houchen for Tees Valley is looking like the favourite. This is why the Green candidate selflessly dropped out, just to really, you know, make sure that she wasn't responsible for him sneaking through. But the Tories are still in pole position there. I mean, who knows? But, you know, the impression I'm getting is, you know, Houchen is expected to win. It's really close in the West Midlands. So, you know, Andy Street could sneak that one as well for the Tories. There are a few other contests where it's quite close. for Labour as well. It's quite likely that Labour enjoyed good results in the locals, but maybe not the best ones for the mayoral contest, where, you know, we will see. I mean, so many of the contests, they're so tight that a real push on tactical voting, who knows, could still be catastrophic for the Tories. But with so many tight polls, and you think with voter ID, you just think it's too much to hope that the Tories actually lose all of the key contests, which is probably what needs to happen for Sunak to have a complete disaster. Because if Sunak can hail any wins at all next Friday, he is surely then less likely to face serious cause for him to step aside again. So that is the only news I think Sunak can get, which could be considered good. But the raw elements of last week, Tories pointed out, oh, the defence pledge, that was brilliant. Oh, the Rwanda plan, brilliant. It's like, no, I don't think they're wins. Why do you think they're wins? I mean, we can wait to see how the polls look in a few weeks. I just don't see any evidence that the Tories have done anything last week which puts them in a better position now than they were earlier this year. And let's say it did. Let's say in a few weeks' time the polls are looking better on, say, the Rwanda plan. Then it'll be like, okay, but then what happens when the flights take off and the boats don't stop? Are you still going to enjoy that poll bounce if you ever get it? And defence spending. So let's say that cuts through and Labour decide to attack it. Is it going to hold up against those attacks? I don't think so, because there's no actual money there. So I don't think it was a good week at all. I thought it was a disastrous week. But there we are anyway. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.